Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a video about this very interesting shotgun that you see in front of you. This is the Stoeger double defense over and under shotgun in 12 gauge. Now, to tell a little story of how we got here, I was watching a video that Administrative Results did probably at least a year ago, if not longer ago now, on a chopped down over and under shotgun that he got. I think he got a used one and chopped it down. And I thought, you know what, that is so impractical and yet so cool. I want to do something like that. And so I would always just kind of passively peruse the used gun section of the gun store where I used to work, and just hoping that I would find something that fit the ticket. And then I decided to just kind of look, all right, well, let me see if I can find an affordable new shotgun that I could chop down without feeling too guilty about. And lo and behold, I found this. This is a gun that is in its full factory configuration, minus the optic, the light, and this little stock pouch here, but it already comes with a chopped down 20-inch barrel, Pitini Rail on top, and Pitini Rail on both sides of the shotgun in all black. This thing is made to be kind of that tactical over and under right out of the box without any extra modification from me. So that was even better. As much as I love taking a hacksaw to guns, it's just a whole lot easier when it's already like that from the factory. So I went ahead, got a hold of Stoeger, asked if they would be willing to send one out for me to review. So they did send it to me on a T&E basis, meaning I could either choose to pay for it and keep it at the end or send it back. I'll let you wait to see what the result of that decision was at the end of the video. But let's go ahead and just talk about the features of this shotgun before we get into too much about the specifics and my experience with this shotgun up to now. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 20-inch barrel, so you got 20 on the top and bottom. It has no chokes, so you're doing just a regular cylinder bore for both barrels. And again, for the application that I see for something like this, that is perfectly sufficient. I'm not going to be doing trap and skeet with this thing. I'm not trying to do any crazy patterning with birdshot. This is meant either for home defense in an area where you want a shotgun but can't do anything else, or just for mag dumping into trash. And this thing is exceptionally good for that. So again, do with that what you will. If you want chokes, this isn't going to be the one for you. However, usually a chop down over and under is not something you're looking for that anyway. We do have a fiber optic front sight. I actually really like this front sight. So it's a big, thick green fiber optic rod up front. Now, generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of fiber optics because it does require some ambient light to be effective. But again, the application that we're talking about here, it does very well with that. If we are talking about like home defense or something like that, I would rather something tritium, something that's going to glow in the dark. Moving back from there, we have the Pitini Rail on both sides. So it is kind of a hollowed out center, so almost kind of more of a weaver style with that Pitini spacing. So I do have a flashlight on here. There have been times when I've had an infrared laser on the other side just because it's like, you got the rail space, you might as well put something on there. The Enforce light is not one that I recommend. In fact, I would actively recommend against an Enforce light. It was just the only light that I had kicking around that wasn't on a gun that I actually wanted to use for any serious purposes. So I threw it on there. Again, friends don't let friends buy Enforce. I've had 6 or 7 Enforce lights and only 2 of them have remained working. This one and one that is on a rifle that belongs to my brother now. I've broken 5 other Enforce lights, so do with that information what you will. Moving back, we have this polymer handguard, and as far as the disassembly, it's just kind of a little push button to be able to hinge that down. Works perfectly well. There's not really any good spots if you wanted to run a tape switch. There's no like good flat areas to do that. Again, depending on how crazy you want to go with it, that may or may not be of concern to you. And then we have the Pitini Rail up top, which it's worth mentioning, if you don't have an optic, you can still use this Pitini Rail in place and pick up that front fiber optic sight. That is not a problem at all. However, now that I do have an optic up top here, I cannot use that fiber optic anymore. So now I've got one of the Holosun 503Gs with the ACSS reticle, because if you got that nice chevron with the ring, just to be able to get a nice good shotgun pattern with the ring, or be a little bit more precise with the chevron, although we'll talk about precision a little bit later. Moving back to the actual action back here, so it only has extractors, it does not have ejectors. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, what that means is when you have a round in here and you go to open it, it just pulls it back ever so slightly for you to be able to pull it out. It does not shoot them out as you've seen in certain video games and whatnot. So you do have to manually remove them. However, with certain types of loads, I have actually had success where you just break it open, give it a little bit of a shake, kind of like you see cowboy action guys do, and those will come out. Not, I would say, with enough reliability to rely on that, but just gonna throw that out there. It would be cool if it had ejectors, but you would be looking at probably a significantly more expensive shotgun if it did. Behind that, we do have the standard style of lever to break it open. It does have to be pushed off to the right, so it's meant for right-handed individuals to push it with your thumb. If you're a lefty, you would have to reach across and pull it back towards you to break it open. Not a huge deal if you're right-handed, maybe a little bit of a deal if you're wrong-handed. Now, we do have the safety behind that, standard style of Tang safety. If you're familiar with Mossberg shotguns, you're gonna be familiar with that, or most other over and under or side-by-side shotguns for that matter. And it does, if you have it in fire and you break the action, it does automatically put it back into safe. So after you've fired both barrels and you reload, you do have to manually push that safety back to fire before it will fire. Now, as far as the triggers, you can't do the kind of two barrels at the same time thing because it only has the single trigger. Not a problem to me. It's always kind of a pain remembering, okay, which triggers, which barrel, if you're trying to do anything like only loading one for load testing or anything like that. So you just put your rounds in the barrel, pull the trigger once for the bottom barrel, pull it again for the top barrel. It does start bottom barrel, then top barrel every single time for what that's worth. And then just a nice polymer stock back here. It does have a fairly thin rubber pad. It's effective enough. It's still a 12 gauge shotgun. It's still gonna thump you with some of the full power loads, slugs, and like double up buck and whatnot. But actually fairly pleasant to shoot with birdshot, which has been the majority of what I've put through this shotgun. I did just slide one of the stock pouches onto the side here just to give it a little bit of extra capability. I've thought about maybe trying to put some Velcro on the side here for extra rounds, but again, I think at that point we're kind of getting away from what this thing is, which is just, again, a really good gun for mag dumping in a trash and just to change things up and have something fun at a fairly reasonable price as well. So if you did want to use it for any sort of practical purpose, you're probably going to care about how this thing patterns and what kind of accuracy you can get with it. So let's go ahead and cut to some testing that I did with some buckshot and then doing some shots with some slugs. All right, so first up for this load test, I got some double up buck at 7 yards. Hornady American Gunner low recoil double up buck. S&B number 4 buck. All right, so first we've got our double up buck S&B. This one was about 3.5 inches or so. Now all of these groups were shot using the bottom barrel because that's the first barrel to fire. This appears the wad. We're looking at about 3 inches. Then we shot this Hornady double up buck, the low recoil. We're looking at about 2 1/4, probably under 2, because it's hard to tell where the wad is there. And then the number 4 buck down here opened up quite a bit from the same distance. Looking at almost 5 inches in diameter. And then we switched to the rifled slugs. So both shots, I had a nice point of aim right here. Bottom barrel shot down here in the neck. Top barrel just clipped the top of them. So that is a 6 1/4 inch dispersion between those two barrels at this distance. I've shot the Remington Slugger before, and it usually prints nice and tight. So that much dispersion at only 22 yards is pretty considerable and definitely worth taking into consideration. All right, so after seeing that dispersion with the slugs, it begged the question, are we going to see that with the double-aught buck as well? So I've got 2 of the S&B double-aught buck, same stuff that I fired first for the patterning. I've never noticed in the past when shooting multiple rounds of double-aught buck at the same time a significant point of impact shift, but now we're actually going to measure that and see if there is a point of impact shift that's severe enough to notice and how much of it is. This was back at 7 yards, so not a crazy distance. The first bump was down here, the top pattern is here. Not terribly unexpected given the fact that, again, we're shooting from 2 planes. So not a terrible point of impact shift, again, at the realistic self-defense in your house distance of 7 yards. But again, still just something to be in consideration of when you're firing something with multiple barrels. So hopefully the audio there wasn't too terrible. I had not put my microphone on at the time when I did those, but the buckshot patterning was fairly typical, and in fact maybe a little bit tighter than you would typically expect. You know, if we're talking the average of 1 inch per yard travel downrange of dispersion, it was well within that with all 3, but especially so with the double-aught buck, opened up a little bit more with the number 4. However, we did see a lot of dispersion with the top and bottom barrels as far as accuracy goes with the slug. It was like a 6-inch difference, if I remember correctly, between where the bottom barrel impacted and then the top barrel impacted, using the same point of aim and a very confident trigger press with both of them. So do with that information what you will. It could just be that this doesn't like those slugs particularly well. Further testing would tell me more. Unfortunately, those are the only slugs that I have out here today. So again, if you're ever going to be using anything for home defense or, you know, defense whatsoever, you owe it to yourself to do load testing, especially with shotguns, and accuracy testing with the ammo that you're going to be using, not just shooting birdshot through it and then being like, yep, okay, we're good to go. I know what this thing will do. You need to shoot the ammo that you're actually going to use. So do with that information what you will. But what has my overall experience with this shotgun been? So honestly, very, very pleasant. Had I had to put something like this together myself, I probably wouldn't have gone to doing the Picatinny on the sides. So the fact that that comes out of the factory is great. I was also paying specific attention to see, and one of the reasons I wanted to put stuff on here, especially early on, was to see if those rails would come loose. That's something that you see very often happen on shotguns, where rails and stuff start rattling loose because of the higher recoil. That has not happened on the front or on the top with the mounted optic. And I have run it with stuff the majority of the time. Maybe other than like the first 2 times I took this thing out, it's had stuff attached to it. And again, everything has stayed exactly where it should be. It has loosened up a little bit, but it is still fairly stiff, which is good because that means that as it wears in, it will still maintain some of that stiffness. So it's not going to feel super loose and sloppy. But it is still fairly stiff and was stiff straight out of the box, but it is wearing in fairly nicely now through, I don't know, probably 300 or 400 rounds through this thing so far. But it's just been a lot of fun. There's just something that is satisfying about the tactile feel of having to break an action open, pull the rounds out, put rounds back in, and close it. You know, it's kind of that, if you're a fan of the games like Doom or I don't know, or even like, in fact, when I posted a picture of this, someone was like, hey, that's the insert gun title here. And I had to look it up, and apparently Rainbow Six Siege, I think it's like the Boss G or something like that. I'm sure Rainbow Six fans in the comments will be upset by me not knowing what it is. But like there's an over-under shotgun that looks almost exactly like this, except that it has ejectors instead of extractors. And I might actually stencil the same lettering on the side just for the memes. But it's just been a lot of fun. Again, it's a very different experience if you're not used to that over and under style. And even if you are, usually you're not dealing with something this short. And because it's an over under where the barrel starts back here, it feels a whole lot shorter than a typical 20-inch barrel would. Now, would it be my primary choice for self-defense? No. While yes, 2 loads of double-aught buck, if put where they need to be, can be extraordinarily effective, I just want a lot more rounds on board without having to reload. I mean, I'll roll in footage, if I haven't already, of how fumbly some of my reloads were with this thing. And that's on a nice sunny, clear sunny afternoon, Sunday afternoon. God forbid it's 2 a.m., I'm half awake and my adrenaline is spiking and I have no idea what's going on and I'm trying to load rounds into this in the dark. It's only gonna get worse. So I'd rather at least have 5 or 6 rounds on board with the pump, or even more like a Beretta 1301. So if this is all you can legally have, like an over and under, wherever you're at, it's worth consideration. But if you have access to almost literally anything else, that would be a lot better. But I'm also the kind of person that believes you are allowed to own guns just for fun, and this is definitely one of those. And so much so to the point where I am purchasing this to be able to keep it. It's just affordable enough that I could justify having it. It's something that doesn't take up a lot of space in the safe because over and under shotguns are fairly svelte. And it's something different that you can take out with your buddies and they've probably never shot anything like it before. And it'll still do a good job of mag dumping into trash, although the mag dump doesn't take too long with only 2 barrels. So do with that information what you will. But yeah, and the weird thing about these is they've been around. They do make a side-by-side version of this, at least they did when I first looked it up. So if you prefer the side-by-side coach gun aesthetic, that is available. I already have a used side-by-side that I chopped down, so I opted to go with an over-under style on this one. But it's just, I don't know, it's a whole vibe, it's a whole style, it's a whole aesthetic, and I just dig it personally. So if you're looking for something just to keep things different, keep it fresh, and just find other ways to sling 12 gauge loads into random piles of trash or, you know, rotten fruits and vegetables, I think it's worth looking into. Or just, again, just to have something different that draws people's attention at the range. This is very well suited for that purpose. So I am actually fairly appreciative to Stoeger as a brand for being willing to do something very, very different and non-traditional with an over and under. Very, very few manufacturers of over and unders would be willing to do something like this. A lot of them take themselves way too seriously. So big props to Stoeger for actually being willing to do something different, bring something to the market that I think there is a fairly wide number of people out there who would find interest in this, and especially doing so at a reasonable price. And if they could just add ejectors, that would seal the deal for me. Again, I know that would increase cost by a non-insignificant margin, but I think it would be cool. So that's really all there is to it. It's a fun gun. It's been reliable. It's well made by everything I can tell. And when being used for the primary purpose of fun at the range, it is very, very well suited for that. Now, if you guys have any recommendations of other little things that I could do to this to make it even more end user friendly, definitely let me know. I do not have a ton of experience with over and under or side-by-side shotguns outside of recreational shooting at the range. So I am all ears for any recommendations that you guys might have. But I also want to say thanks to my patrons for helping to make a video like this one possible, even though Stoeger did provide the shotgun at no cost, even though I will be purchasing it with my own money. The ammo that I ran through this and the optic up top were all paid for directly with contributions from the people over on Patreon. So because of that, we post all of our content over there early. We do some exclusive content. We do a monthly live stream. We have a Discord server. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting, or you just want to financially support the channel, definitely follow the links down in the description below. But anyway, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.